Today we honor John Wells Stevenson and his family, father, grandfather, born October 29, 1869, to Edward and Emily Electa Williams Stevenson. Married Sarah Ann Perry, June 23, 1897, in the Salt Lake Temple. They were the parents of 8 children, attended the University of Deseret, died April 26, 1954. His daughter Elsie Stevenson Parker gave the following tribute, August 8, 1971.
Our father was a quiet, refined, dignified man, respected by all who knew him. He was a farmer by trade, although he could have been a lawyer or a doctor had he wished. Father loved to see things growing from the seeds he planted, and to watch the fruit as it slowly formed and ripened on the trees. The peaches were delicious, and no one could raise asparagus that tasted as good as the asparagus Father raised. People came to our farm for miles for our asparagus. The corn, tomatoes, and cantaloupes were delicious, too. Father supplied the Hotel Utah and the Alta Club with fruit and vegetables from our farm for years. Father was happy on the farm and enjoyed the peacefulness of the country. We would hear his cheerful whistling as he did the early morning chores very early every morning. He always whistled or hummed a tune as he plowed the fields and irrigated the gardens. Father and Mother purchased the farm when their first 2 children, Eddie and Irma, were very small. The house was built of red brick and faced the sunset. There was 5 large, comfortable rooms in the house and a big roomy pantry. A spacious lawn spread out like a green velvet carpet across the front. There was a white porch, all lacy and fancy and very artistic, supported by brown white poles. But the real artwork was in the parlor. High up in the center of the ceiling, a circle of adorable cherub angels, made of plaster Paris and painted in many gorgeous colors, looked down as if to protect us from all harm. The angels were surrounded with garlands of flowers. To us, it was a masterpiece. We felt very fortunate to have acquired this elegant work of art along with the house. As the family grew and became larger, Mother and Father realized that the house was much too small. The rooms that had seemed so large and roomy at first somehow seemed smaller now. The ceilings were 14 feet high, and most of the roominess went up and down instead of across and around. There were no clothes closets anywhere in the house, and no electricity or plumbing. So Father started a remodeling project that kept him busy for years. The first thing he did was to install new ceilings 2 feet lower in all the rooms. Our beautiful cherub angels just disappeared. We were sure Father had ruined our parlor. Father added an upstairs and built 2 bedrooms in our attic. He built clothes closets, cupboards, and bookcases in the house. He added a long divided porch across the back with more sleeping space. The pantry was too big and the kitchen was too small, so Father tore down the wall between them and made one big room. Then he added a new kitchen cabinet. He piped fresh spring water inside the house and built a bathroom. We were delighted. How nice it was to have the plumbing right inside the house. When the power company brought electricity along our street, Father wired every room, upstairs and down, for electricity. But that wasn't all the remodeling Father did. The first car he purchased was a 2-seated 1911 Cadillac. We were overjoyed and felt extra grand riding to town in the 2-seated Cadillac. It was far more elegant than the Surrey with the fringe on top, and faster too. But Father needed a truck more than we needed a family car, so he remodeled the Cadillac into a truck. He removed the back seat and replaced it with a small truck section. A new top was installed over the front seat. No matter how difficult a project was, once Father started it, he always completed it. He did an excellent job on the Cadillac and used it for a number of years. Father loved his children and was concerned about their welfare. He worked long, tedious hours on the farm to provide for us. He was proud of his ancestry and proud of his parents, brothers, and sisters. Father loved them dearly. Mother and Father saw to it that we attended church and Sunday school regularly. He was president of the Young Men's Mutual Improvement Association in the Butler Ward for a few years. In the latter years of his life, after the farm was sold and he moved to Salt Lake City, he worked in the temple. Mother and Father lived on the farm for 40 years, from 1902 to 1942. Father served as secretary and treasurer for 2 ditch companies through most of those 40 years, the Brown and Sanford Irrigation Company and the Tanner Ditch Company. He was exceptionally good at math and an excellent penman. His signature on the stock certificates he issued for the two ditch companies was a work of art. The records he kept were neat and orderly. Our father had a marvelous balance of judgment. He was modest, intelligent, thrifty, and proud. He liked fine things. He didn't care for gossip or to listen to jokes that were in poor taste. Father loved his fellow men and was liked and admired by them. People often came to him for advice. He never betrayed their confidence. He was a fine gentleman and set a good example for us, his children and grandchildren. Now, Irma will tell you about Father's descendants and give you some information about them.
Our father and mother had 8 children. The first one, Edward J., married Josephine Peterson, and they reside in San Jose. They have 1 son and 5 daughters. One of their daughters lives in Phoenix, Arizona. 3 of Edward's daughters and his son have converted their mates to the church, and we're very proud of this. Next came Raymond Wells, and Raymond Wells was drowned in Big Cottonwood Canyon when he was not quite 3 years old. And according to statistics, I'm the next. And I married Fred Zimmerman, and Fred has been ill and could not be here tonight. We have 1 daughter and 4 grandchildren, and they can speak for themselves. They're here. And at this point, I'd like to play a tribute from the in-laws. This is what one of them said. As future sons and daughter-in-laws began to appear on the threshold, the admiration and love for him increased. Each one referred to him as father with the deepest respect. One daughter-in-law said, I felt he always had his arms around me. I felt he really understood me. And number 4, Owen Perry. And Owen left us last August the 20th. He was always so good and kind to Mother and Father. I'm sure the most of you remember Owen, how good he was to Mother and Father. And I'm sure they were glad to welcome him. And number 6 is Elsie, who you just heard. And she married Roy Parker, and they've lived always here in Salt Lake. And Roy died a long time ago when David was just a tiny baby, and Elsie has raised all those 3 boys, much to her credit, and to Mother and Father's. And you'll hear from them. Then comes Myron William, and he married Florence Nielsen, and they live in Baldwin Park. And 2 of their children live there, a son and a daughter, and 1 daughter lives in Denver. 2 of his children have converted their mates, and he has 1 grandson, Leo Morgan, on a mission in England. And then Clyde Perry married Margaret Flowers. They have always resided in Salt Lake. They have 3 children. And Clyde, as some of you know, left us on the 31st of May to join Mother, Father, Owen, and Raymond. Their daughter Carolyn came here from Erie, Pennsylvania, to be with her father the last month of his life. And then she returned to Erie, Pennsylvania, and on the 5th of July she gave birth to twin girls. And next on the list is the last but not the least, Rowene, and you will hear from her. And Rowene has 3 children, and they live in Layton, and her daughter has just had a baby boy, and she brought him home from the hospital yesterday with his mother. And at this time, I'm going to turn this mic over to Richard Parker, a grandson, to pay tribute to his grandfather.
I'll have a little treat for you a little later. I hope that you'll like what you hear. It's difficult to give a tribute to such a fine, stalwart man as my grandfather, but I'm going to try and give a couple of memories that I have of him, and I'm sure some of the other grandchildren that are here will remember some of these things that I remember. Many years ago, when it was time to go to Grandpa's house, we'd all get in the old Model A Ford, and it had a nice little rumble seat in it, and we'd drive out to Grandpa's house, and out here where the Cottonwood Mall is now, or thereabouts, there was a set of humps. We used to call them the humps. Maybe everybody around here can remember those, and we used to just love to go over those to get to Grandpa's house. And when we'd get out there, of course, we just loved to get up on those haystacks and jump off the haystacks, and of course Grandpa didn't particularly like that, and I can still hear him saying to me, "Richard, my boy." And this is one of his expressions that he always used with me now, "Richard, my boy." And I'll never forget that, because many times when something goes wrong, I can still hear him saying, "Richard, my boy." I'm sure a lot of other people around here will remember that too. We always had delicious meals at Grandma and Grandpa's house. He raised his own corn, as my mother said, and asparagus, and I don't think that ever in my life have I ever tasted food that was as well prepared. And coming right out of the garden that Grandpa had there, it was just absolutely a tremendous treat to go out there and have our Sunday dinner. I can remember many things about Grandpa, but I think one thing that's always stayed with me, when my father passed away, and sometime later when we were living with my grandfather, and this is one thing that has stayed with me all of my life. It's something that he told me in a fatherly way, and I never forgot it. And he said, "Richard, my boy, again, if you want to be successful in life, I want you to remember what I'm going to tell you now. There's only one way that I know of to be successful, and that's either to work men or to work money." Now, I've never forgot that. Grandpa always had a cheerful hello for everyone. Whenever he saw us, whenever he came to our house, especially at Thanksgiving time, we always had Grandma and Grandpa at our house, and we used to have all the other family members come over and join with us in the Thanksgiving dinner, but he always had a very cheerful hello for everybody. There was always a smile on his face, and he was always such a kind and gentle person. And I think in remembering someone, if you can remember the happiness that he gives to other people and the smile that he had on his face all the time, these are things that you like to remember. You don't ever like to remember the bad things, and I frankly don't remember any bad things about my grandfather. I'm going to tell you a story that my grandfather told me. This is a spiritual story, and I think it's worth repeating here for all of you. As you know, Edward Stevenson was one of the gentlemen that was instrumental in bringing back to Salt Lake City the Martin Harris, one of the three witnesses to the Book of Mormon. And my grandfather was in the home as a young boy. I don't know his age then. It could have been probably 9 or 10 years of age, but he was a very young boy. When Martin Harris sat in the living room of his home and bore his testimony as to what he had actually seen in the time that he was allowed to look at the plates of the Book of Mormon. And he described in detail, my grandfather now described to us, to me, and I think other members of the family here have heard this story, how Martin Harris related in his presence the story of the angel Moroni, and how he saw this man, the angel Moroni, how he saw the plates of gold, and how he felt them and touched them, and then bore witnesses to their validity and their accuracy, and that he had seen this. My grandfather told this as a testimony, and it was something I have always remembered and something that I'll always cherish from having heard my grandfather tell of his actual experience of hearing Martin Harris bear his testimony. I think that's something that would be worthwhile repeating here to you today. You know, one of the most beautiful things that my grandfather ever did was to write his name, and my mother was not kidding when she said that it was a work of art. I've never seen, and I don't think I ever will see, a signature like my grandfather put on those stock certificates. I still remember looking at them and was amazed. I thought that it was printed. I couldn't believe that he had actually done this with his own hand. I remember that very well. When I was called into the mission field back in 1949 and left home for a couple of years, there was a recording made of my grandfather and my grandmother to me as a missionary. And I have the voices of my grandfather and my grandmother on tape here today. And my son Rodney is going to let you hear my grandfather's voice and my grandmother's voice talking to me as a missionary on tape when I was in the beautiful country of Denmark.
We have just heard Richard give his little version on how thankful he is for his grandpa and his grandma. And I can tell you that we appreciate our grandchildren. We appreciate Richard and his mother. What a wonderful mother she is, and how good she has been to all her children and took such good care of them. And we are so thankful and grateful for Thanksgiving Day. It comes around once a year, and we're thankful to be together with our sons and daughters, grandchildren, and we love them. We love them so much. We see them and notice someone growing up, manhood, womanhood, and we sure do appreciate their associations. We've had a good time today. We've had a good turkey dinner, finely prepared, and it was wonderful. We sure enjoy coming. We hope that we'll be able to come a good many more. We just feel like we're just getting started now. So we hope to live to see many more of them. And we are thankful to our Heavenly Father for the many blessings that we receive. Well, wonderful blessings that come to us day by day. And we feel as though we have all been blessed, and we have had His protecting care over us. That we are proud, happy to meet, and render our thanks to our Heavenly Father for His many blessings.
This is our grandma. I'm thankful to be here with my girls and boys today, and I hope they've all had a good time. I know I have, and I've enjoyed it very much, and I hope to be here with another year. And I'm thankful to my Heavenly Father for all the blessings He has given to us. I'm glad to have Rowena and Irma and Elsie, their husbands and children. I thank my grandchildren, each and every one of them, and I enjoy them very much.
Hello, Richard. I'm going to call you Richard.
Can you hear that in the back?
I say Dick, but I love my boy Richard. Stanley, he brought up his recorder, and he says that he wanted to have my voice to send to you. Well, sure, I'm glad to send it to you and give me joy and happiness to talk to you. I wish you longing for the time when you will come back and we can face to face and talk to each other and enjoy our associations again. I sure wish you lots of success, joy, happiness, and we wish you a successful new year. Hope you enjoy yourself very much. We'll be longing to see you when you come home. Time flies very rapidly, so enjoy yourself while you're away, and remember that you're in the service of our Heavenly Father. And may His blessings always be with you. Is the voice from your grandfather.
Oh, Dick. Grandpa says Richard, maybe I should say Richard too. But just the same, I love my Dick. I've always loved him, ever since he was a tiny, tiny baby. And now he's in the mission field, working for our Heavenly Father and doing a great work by what his letters tells me. And I will be glad to see him when he returns home. I hope you'll have a good time this year in the mission field and do big work and return home safely to us all. I ask the Lord to bless you always and keep you loving and happy as you are today, your loving grandmother.
John's daughter, Rowene, adds the following. August 12th, 1982.
At the time of Father's birth, the family was residing in Salt Lake 14th Ward, where his birth is recorded on page 28, according to the Big Cottonwood Board records. He was baptized in Big Cottonwood by David B. Britton on May 2nd, 1880. Because his membership record did not give a full baptism date, as he prepared to be ordained an elder, it was necessary for him to be rebaptized. On June the 5th, 1897, by M. W. Taylor, and confirmed June the 6th, 1897, by John M. Mortensen. He was ordained an elder by Joseph Boyce, June the 14th, 1897, and endowed in the Salt Lake Temple, June the 23rd, 1897. He and Sarah were married by John R. Winder, June 23, 1897, following which they moved into a Salt Lake apartment for 3 years, and then moved to Big Cottonwood in 1900, where they lived in the Joseph Echo Stevenson home, following the death of their second son, Raymond, who drowned in an irrigation canal. They moved in 1902 to the Butler Farm, which is located on 7781 Highland Drive, where they remained until February the 2nd, 1941, when they moved to the 8-unit apartment at 150 Northwest Temple, which was in Salt Lake 17th Ward. In July of 1951, they moved to their home at 865 Belmont Avenue, which is in the Salt Lake 31st Ward. Here Father remained until his death in 1954. Father had blue eyes and light brown hair and stood about 5 feet 10 inches in height. He was ordained a high priest August 11, 1935 by Albert E. Bergen, who was a member of the High Council of the East Jordan Stake. In addition to his interest in the farm and garden, he had a special interest in music, art, and people. He also played the piano. He served as a block teacher in the Butler Ward and was called to be secretary of the High Priest Quorum in 1938. Father was always so busy working on the farm. The times I really got to know him and feel close to him was when we went on trips together. We really had enjoyable times when we would visit Ermine Fred in Long Beach. As you can see in this picture, we really were having fun. One thing that I remember was very special to me was the evenings we spent as a family around the dining room table playing games. I'll never forget the laughter, fun, and closeness we felt for each other. Sarah Ann Perry was born December 12, 1873 in Salt Lake City, the daughter of James A.D. Perry and Eliza Moore Perry. She was blessed February 5, 1874, and baptized December 5, 1881. Mother was confirmed December 7, 1881, in the Salt Lake 3rd Ward, where she also commenced her schooling. She served as a Sunday school teacher, teaching the second intermediate department. She was endowed and sealed in the Salt Lake Temple, June the 23rd, 1897. She was the literary teacher in the Relief Society and a block teacher from 1921 to 1933 in the Butler Ward. In 1933, she became a theology teacher in the Butler Ward Relief Society and was a visiting teacher in the Salt Lake 17th Ward. Her special interests were literature and industrial art. Mother was employed as a dressmaker about 1891 to probably 1897, and she loved quilting and crocheting. Mother really instilled in me a love for sewing and crocheting. As a child, I loved watching her sew quilt blocks, forming them into beautiful quilts. She always saved all the scraps from materials from dressmaking. Now I do the same, and I love to crochet some of the same patterns she used.
John's daughter Elsie wrote 194 colorful and descriptive pages entitled Memories, which she gave to her mother for Christmas in 1961, from which the following excerpts come.
Mama's treadle Singer sewing machine occupied the space between the two front dining room windows, and almost every day Mama was mending or sewing something. We loved to watch the magic of the needle as the seams were swiftly sewn together. We also loved to operate the foot treadle by pumping it up and down as fast as possible. The picket fence on the north side enclosed a small vegetable garden and fruit trees that grew there. When we ran out of clothesline space, which we did almost every week, we draped the remaining clothes on the pickets of the fence to dry. Our fence looked very dressed up on wash days, with overalls, socks, and long underwear drying on the pickets of the fence in the sunshine or freezing solid in the winter-time. Papa and Mama purchased most of our furniture at the Dinwiddie Furniture Store. Papa worked there for a while before he married Mama, and our furniture was especially nice. Milk, butter, and eggs were stored in the cellar, and thick cream to churn into butter. The milk was strained after each milking morning and night, and then poured into large milk pans. The milk was stored inside a screen cupboard, and thick cream soon rose to the top. Mama carefully skimmed the cream from the milk and kept it in a large earthen jar. We churned the cream into butter once or twice a week. We spent most of the long winter evenings in the dining room reading, playing games, sewing, preparing lessons for school, and looking through our wooden stereoscope at many three-dimensional pictures. Topsy and Bert were Papa's workhorses, and there was plenty of work for both of them to do on the farm. Topsy was black and Bert was white, and they had enormous appetites. They were always hungry and thirsty, and consumed large quantities of oats, barley, and hay every day, and drank gallons and gallons of water from the trough by the well. We had a delightful time in the red brick house on the farm. The evenings were long, and we popped corn by the gallons and made honey taffy candy. Occasionally we made a batch of fudge or some divinity. When the day's work was done, Papa would sit by the warm stove in his big leather rocker and read the morning paper. Mama sat behind Papa in her high-backed mahogany rocker and darned socks or mended. Occasionally Mama found time to read a book or some poetry, but the mending basket was always overflowing with worn-out holey socks, and Mama had a difficult time catching up on the sock darning project. There seemed to be no end to the project, but Mama managed anyway and never complained. Mama also found time on her busy schedule to read and to embroider and crochet. Her hands were never idle. Mama never wasted time. Monday was always wash days, rain or shine, and we took our weekly baths on Saturday. We carried bucket after bucket filled to the brim with cold water from the well to the kitchen. We spilled plenty of water along the way, and our legs and feet would be cold and wet for hours. We would fill the copper boiler and the big round galvanized tubs. Most of the water had to be heated on the kitchen stove, and the kitchen floor had to be scrubbed all over again. The big round galvanized tub was brought into the kitchen every Saturday, and each and every one of us were scrubbed thoroughly from head to foot. Mama's hair was especially beautiful and just the right texture. Mama arranged her hair in a braided bob on top of her head or in a bun at the back of her neck. Either way, Mama looked beautiful, and her hair was always neat and trim. Occasionally, Papa would flood a portion of the lower fields, and we had a marvelous skating pond. We only owned 2 pairs of skates, so we took turns using them. Papa could play the piano without taking lessons or practicing at all. Papa just sat down on the piano stool and played the tunes that he had heard and liked. Papa had been blessed with a good ear for music, and when Papa played the piano, we listened with fascination. I wished I could play the piano like Papa without practicing or taking lessons. Papa inspected the corners when we were through to see if we had cleaned them properly. When Papa said clean the corners, we cleaned the corners. Papa had a way of making us mind, and no one argued or talked back to Papa, but did as we were told and without grumbling. Mama had a schedule for her work, and everything was done according to Mama's schedule. Monday was wash day, rain or shine. Tuesday, ironing day, and every Tuesday morning the heavy flat irons were heated on the warm kitchen stove. We baked and mended on Wednesdays, but Mama was forever baking and mending almost every day of the week. We consumed a number of loaves of bread every week, and Mama baked bread every other day, 8 loaves at a time. Mama used everlasting yeast for the bread she made, and the yeast foamed and fizzed in a big 2-quart jar day after day, and the bread Mama made was delicious. Mama had worked as a seamstress before she married Papa, and Mama knew just how to make our clothes. Mama didn't bother to buy patterns, but cut out her own patterns from newspapers, and our dresses always seemed to fit somehow. Thursday was a free day, no washing, ironing, sweeping, dusting, or scrubbing to do, but the day was never wasted. The bread box was usually empty, or the cream had to be churned. We turned the metal handle around and around, counting the turns as we churned. We swept and dusted on Fridays, upstairs and down, and the long stairway. Saturday was scrubbing day, and every Sunday the house would sparkle and shine. Sunday was a day of rest, but there was no rest for Mama. Every Sunday Mama cooked a delicious dinner, and she couldn't rest until the meal was over, and the dishes washed and dried and everything back in order once more. It took a great deal of Papa's time to remodel a house. Papa had so many other chores and duties to attend to, and Papa could only remain with the remodeling job for short periods at a time. The livestock had to be fed and cared for, and the weeds were forever crowding out the small vegetable plants. Papa was busy keeping the weeds under control most of the summer. Papa cultivated the fields and harvested the hay, and Papa took vegetables and fruit to the growers' market in town. Papa was constantly irrigating the fields and orchards. There was fruit to pick, and Papa had to attend to his duties as secretary and treasurer for the 2 ditch companies. Then, just when Papa had a little extra time and could work on the house, Papa would be called to serve on a jury. Papa was so busy from early spring until late in the fall. There was no end of work on the farm, and Papa was never idle. Electricity brought many marvelous wonders to our farm. An electric washing machine and a new electric iron. The washing machine was a used one, and it gave us a shock if we touched the water when the machine was turned on. Spring was the nicest time of the year on the farm. Buds and blossoms burst into bloom everywhere, and the air was filled with the sweet scent of lilacs and apple blossoms. Birds chirped and sang from every tree on the place, and Papa's whistling was merrier than usual. We could tell just by the way Papa whistled, very early in the morning, beneath our bedroom windows, that spring had arrived. When the birds heard Papa whistling, they tried to compete with him and sang louder than ever. Mama was up at the break of dawn in the springtime, and every morning she worked in her flower garden from early spring until late in the fall. Mama planted all kinds of flowers in her gardens: zinnias, asters, marigolds, snapdragons, chrysanthemums, and petunias. Mama had a green thumb, and Mama's flower gardens were truly beautiful. The peony bushes would be loaded with huge flowers, and Papa had to prop the long stems up to keep them from breaking. Mama's house plants were beautiful too. The kitchen and dining room windows were filled with flowers the entire year around, and the geraniums bloomed constantly. Papa planted a berry patch in the west acres of our farm next to the asparagus patch. Papa said the berry patch was for our own use. We consumed a lot of food, but it was impossible for us to eat all the fruit the berry patch produced. So Papa brought fruit cups and crates home from town and hired the 7 of us to pick the berries. The dewberries were the most difficult to pick, and we nursed scratched hands and arms all summer long. Papa planted long rows of red currants and black currants, raspberries, dewberries, and gooseberries, and more rhubarb. The berry project kept us busy most of the summer, especially Mama. Mama was up long before the sun came up and filled cup after cup, long before we were out of bed. Mama picked more fruit after breakfast and then again in the evening. We even found Mama in the berry patch during the hottest time of the day. Mama wore a sunbonnet or one of Papa's big straw hats for protection from the sun's hot rays. It was fascinating to watch Mama pick berries. Her fingers moved so fast we were sure she had magic in them. Mama often slipped a full cup or 2 of berries into our crates. Papa didn't believe in allowances. Papa said, "The money will only be squandered foolishly," and then we would eat too much candy and ruin our teeth. Papa told us to eat apples instead. We knew Papa was right, but we went right on scheming up ways to buy that forbidden candy. Spring and summer were the busiest times of the year on the farm. Papa and the boys repaired fences and sheds and cleaned out irrigation ditches. The fields and orchards had to be watered constantly, and the weeds kept under control. Every summer Papa worried and worried for fear the crops would be all ruined. There were times when Papa would be up the entire night watering. Papa traipsed to the far end of the field night after night to irrigate. We would see the light from Papa's lantern bobbing up and down in the darkness. Snowball, our favorite dog, was right beside Papa or trailing close behind him. Mama taught us many things: to sew and to cook, to embroider and crochet. Mama also taught us to keep the house neat and clean. Mama hoped and hoped that we would all grow up to be refined, useful citizens someday, and so did Papa. Papa wouldn't allow us to use makeup of any kind, not even Mama. Papa said we would only ruin our complexions, and our powder and lipstick disappeared as fast as we bought them. We had to scheme up ways to buy more. Papa wouldn't allow us to go out of the house with makeup on, not even lipstick. And when we went out on dates, Papa gave us strict orders to be home early. If we arrived home later than Papa expected, the blinds would be up and the house ablaze with lights, and Papa would be strolling through the room in his long underwear.
Some of John's activities are noted in his father's journals as follows. Wednesday, September 27, 1882. I also brought son John from the farm to help me on my new house. Tuesday, November 16, 1886. Made some presents for my children. Johnny, cloth for new suit. Henry called to see me, also Johnny. Saturday, November 20th, 1886. Johnny came for me to go to the city. Monday, November 14th, 1887. John Stevenson came back from Cottonwood. He is going to the university. July 7th, 1888. Johnny and Eugene have hauled 6 loads of hay and sold a small load for $5. I gave them $1 and taken $6 of honey for them and made them 4 new swarms of bees. Saturday, July 28, 1888. John and Eugene take their load of hay out to sell and get $11.50. Wednesday, August 1st, 1888. Johnny Stevenson hauling loads of oats and hay to barn, 3 days half pay. Friday, August 3rd, 1888. Johnny comes with last load of hay from lot and sold 1 load, 19 pounds, for $11.50. Wednesday, October 9th, 1889. My son Johnny is working at Henry Dinwoody's establishment. Wednesday, September 24th, 1890. Son Johnny helps me put hay into the barn. Monday, February 26, 1894. Johnny came over and got 14 pounds of honey to sell.
John Wells Stevenson and Sarah Ann Perry were the proud parents of 8 children, 5 sons and 3 daughters.
Edward James Stevenson was born May 15, 1898 at Salt Lake City, Salt Lake County, Utah, and was married February 10, 1925 at Salt Lake City to Josephine Mary Peterson. She bore him 6 children. He died May 7, 1975, age 76, at San Francisco County, California, and was buried May 12th in the Haywood Memorial Gardens Cemetery, Alameda County, California. Raymond Wells Stevenson was born January 28, 1900 at Salt Lake City and was drowned June 10, 1902, age 2, in the Big Cottonwood Irrigation Canal and was buried in the Salt Lake City Cemetery.
Irma Stevenson was born October 14, 1901 at Holiday, Salt Lake County, Utah, and was married February 23, 1921, in the Salt Lake Temple to Frederick David Zimmerman. They had 1 adopted child. Fred died March 17, 1973, age 73, at Salt Lake City and was buried March 21st in the South Jordan City Cemetery.
Owen Perry Stevenson was born October 2, 1903 at Butler, Salt Lake County, Utah, and was married October 7, 1966 at Salt Lake City to Altja, known in the United States as by Alice Grotepas. They had no children. Owen died August 20, 1970, age 66 at Salt Lake City, and was buried August 24th in the Salt Lake City Cemetery.
Elsie Stevenson was born April 10, 1905 at Butler, and was married June 23, 1927 at Cottonwood, Salt Lake County, Utah, to Leroy Virgil Parker. He died September 20, 1938, age 37 at Salt Lake City, and was buried October 2nd in the Wasatch Lawn Cemetery.
Myron William Stevenson was born August 25, 1907 at Butler and was married March 8, 1930 at Salt Lake City to Florence LaVon Nielsen. She bore him 3 children. Myron died May 4, 1972, age 64 at Monterey Park, Los Angeles County, California, and was buried May 8th in the Rose Hill Cemetery at Whittier, Los Angeles County, California. Clyde Perry Stevenson was born March 17, 1909 at Butler and was married October 2, 1930 at Salt Lake City to Margaret Uinta Flowers. She bore him 3 children. Clyde died May 31, 1971, age 62 at Salt Lake City, and was buried June 4th in the Salt Lake City Cemetery.
Rowene Stevenson was born August 29, 1913 at Butler, and was married September 1, 1936 in the Salt Lake Temple to John Abraham Nelson.
Total known posterity of John Wells Stevenson. as of August 18, 1982. 8 children, 19 grandchildren, 67 great-grandchildren, 12 second great-grandchildren, 106 total posterity, 40 total spouses of children, grandchildren, etc., 146 total posterity, including spouses.
Mother died December 15, 1967, age 94, in Salt Lake City. Her obituary appeared in the Desert News on Saturday, December 16, 1967, as follows. Sarah P. Stevenson. Sarah Perry Stevenson, 94, 865 Belmont Avenue, died of natural causes December 15th at the home of a daughter, 1454 McClellan Street. Born December 12, 1873, Salt Lake City, to James A. and Eliza Moore Perry. Married to John Wells Stevenson, June 23, 1897, Salt Lake LDS Temple. He died April 26, 1954. Survivors, sons, daughters: Edward J., San Lorenzo, California; Myron W., Los Angeles; Clyde P., Owen P., Mrs. Fred D., Irma Zimmerman; Mrs. Leroy V. Elsie Parker, all Salt Lake City; Mrs. John A. Rowene Nelson Layton; 19 grandchildren, 45 great-grandchildren, brothers, sisters: James, Mrs. Clara Griffith, both Salt Lake City; Mrs. Martha Malquist, Long Beach, California. Mother was buried December 19, 1967, in the Salt Lake City Cemetery. Her services were held in the Larkin Mortuary at 260 East South Temple, with Bishop Richard Patter officiating. The speakers were Bishop Harold Eldridge and Bishop Nathaniel Jones, former bishop of the Butler Ward.
The obituary of John Wells Stevenson in the Deseret News of April 27, 1954, is as follows. John Wells Stevenson, 84, 863 Belmont Avenue, died Monday at 6:30 p.m. at his residence of causes incident to age. Born October 29, 1869, in Salt Lake, son of Edward and Emily Williams Stevenson. Married Sarah Perry, June 23, 1897, in the Salt Lake Temple, Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Was a high priest in the 31st Ward. Survivors: widow, sons: Edward James Stevenson, San Lorenzo, California; Myron William Stevenson, El Monte, California; Owen Perry Stevenson and Clyde Perry Stevenson, Salt Lake. Daughters: Mrs. Irma Zimmerman and Mrs. Elsie Parker, Salt Lake, and Mrs. Rowene Nelson, Layton. 3 brothers, 1 sister, 19 grandchildren, and 6 great-grandchildren. The Deseret News of Wednesday, April 28, 1954, indicates that the funeral services were held in the Rose Room of the Deseret Mortuary, 36 East, 7th South, Friday, 2 p.m. Burial was in the Salt Lake City Cemetery, April 30th, 1954. A few excerpts from the funeral services of Uncle John follow. Bishop Nathaniel Jones, former bishop of the Butler Ward, was the first speaker. He said, "I'm thankful for the years that I have known him. Whenever I have seen him at home or at church, he has always had that sweet, peaceful smile. Calm, peaceful unto death. He named Elder Young and myself and others who were to participate in these services. It's a wonderful thing that the Lord has made known to us as a people the conditions of the spirit world, that we can know to a certain extent. We know at least in part what kind of place we are going to when we die. Brother Stevenson knew that, and his last hours were not fraught with fear or with a guilty conscience, but he had a clear conscience. He was not afraid to die. Probably he was looking forward in a certain way to going and meeting his loved ones and seeing them again. Now, when anyone knows that, and has a testimony, as Brother Stevenson did, that the gospel as we have it is true, he knew that God lives. He knew that the Book of Mormon is true, and knowing that, we cannot fear death, because if we have lived as he lived, we are not afraid to meet our Father who loves us, and our elder brother Jesus Christ, who died that we might be saved. And Brother Stevenson, when he moved into Salt Lake, into the 17th Ward, they found out that he had been a farmer, and so they put him in charge of the welfare farm. And at different times when I visited him, he spoke of that farm, and he was quite thrilled with the things that they were doing and the fact that he was chosen to work in the great welfare plan of the church. I know that he will be happy in the spirit world with his loved ones, and with those who have preceded him, with our Father in heaven. But he will not be idle. He was always busy here in this life, a hard worker, and there, God's kingdom is being carried on there. The gospel is being preached, and I know that he will enjoy the service of the Lord there while he is waiting for the rest of his loved ones to come and join him, and for the morning of the resurrection, when we will all be resurrected, and the saints will live here in Zion.
Elder Levi Edgar Young, one of the 7 presidents of the 70s, said,
Now these words, where Job has been suffering, Job says, For I know that my Redeemer liveth, that he shall stand at the latter day on the earth. And though after my skin worms destroy this body, yet in my flesh shall I see God. It is one of the greatest teachings in the history of modern Christianity. It is true, and this Brother Stevenson loved its truths and abided by it. John speaks, John the Revelator, And I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth were passed away. And God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow, nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain. He that overcometh shall inherit all things, and I will be his God, and he will be my son. Christ gave his testimony that God the Father lives. Jesus is the Christ, and he died for us. And the gate is open. Your loved one is passing through. God bless you. God bless us all. And may it be a day of joy and thanksgiving. He lives.